Oh, yay.
Okay, so we have some Bible verses that we will be covering, so I'm going to go ahead and give those to you guys. The first Bible verse we have is John 8:31 through 37. So this is the Bible verse. To the Jews who had believed in him, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teachings, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." They answered him, "We are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves of anyone. How can you say that we shall be set free?" Jesus replied, "Very truly, I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now, a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, then you are free indeed. I know that you're Abraham's descendants, yet you're looking for a way to kill me because you have no room for my word." Now, one thing I just want to point out for myself, because when I read this, it finally kind of just dawned on me. Yes, at 50 years old, it finally dawned on me. When he says the Son sets you free, when he talks about the Son being part of the family, being part of the permanent family, Jesus is talking about himself. He is the Son of God. And that is what he's saying. If you are his disciple, the Son will set you free. Not the sun in the sky. Jesus, the Son, will set you free. So that's kind of one version. I wanted to give you something a little different, and the same verse in a different version. This is the Message version. Same verse, just in like more conversational speech, something that you might understand a little bit more. Then Jesus turned to the Jews who had claimed to believe in him. "If you stick with this, living out what I tell you, you are my disciples for sure. Then you'll experience for yourselves the truth, and the truth will free you." Surprised, they said, "But we're descendants of Abraham. We've never been slaves to anyone. How can you say the truth will set you free?" Jesus said, "I tell you most solemnly that anyone who chooses a life of sin is trapped in a dead-end life and is in fact a slave. A slave can't come and go at will. The Son, though, has an established position, the run of the house." That's Jesus. So, if the Son sets you free, you are free through and through. I know you're Abraham's descendants, but I also know, listen to this, I also know that you are trying to kill me because my message hasn't yet penetrated your thick skulls. Jesus has some harsh words for these people. I'm talking about things that I have seen while keeping company with the Father. And you just go on doing what you have heard from your father. The second verse we're going to talk about is John 3:16. Okay.
So, on the verses before, one of the things, so Jesus is talking to a group of people. He's talking specifically to Israelites. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Bible, I'm jumping ahead.
You're jumping ahead.
I'm jumping
He's
ahead.
jumping ahead. But it's okay. You go. You do you, boo-boo.
The Israelites, so they say that they've never been slaves, but the Israelites were in Egypt
As slaves.
As slaves. So they're
For
saying
how many years? Hundreds.
Hundreds.
Seemed like.
So they're already trying to argue that, hey, we were never slaves. They don't want to listen to what Jesus is telling them. That's where that thick skulls is coming from. Is they're trying to explain away. They're just trying to say, you know what, whatever. We don't want to hear what you have to say. And that's really a point that we're going to drill in a little bit.
Yeah. And so, yes, I heard somebody say, "Oh, the famous one." Yeah, this is a very famous verse. This gets quoted a lot. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. So that's kind of where the basis of the lesson tonight is. But we do want to talk about something.
So, I read that verse, and they're arguing with Jesus and saying, "Hey, look, this is stuff that we learned from our parents." So I was trying to think, all right, well, what's a good way to give you guys an example on that? So, I ask you all a question: who taught you to tie your shoelaces? Me. You learned yourself? Cool. French woman? Parents? Grandparents? Aunt? Uncle?
My dad. Brother.
Family?
Your dad. Brother, sister.
So, all right, hold up. Who do you think taught them to tie their shoes?
Their dad.
Their parents. So, all right, hold on. How do you tie your shoes? Oh, you do. So there's two loop it. Make two bunny ears.
The bunny ears.
All right. So I've actually heard both. All right, so here you go. How many of you? Let's see. You raise your hand. Where you do one loop and you wrap around, sort of pull through. All right. Nice and high. Raise your hand. Nice and high. All right, everyone, look around. One loop, wrap it around, put your finger in, pull it through. All right. The other way. Who does two loops, wraps the loops? All right. All right, cool. All right, so we have two different ways of doing the same exact thing, taught by different people over generations. Right? So this isn't something that just your parents figured out for you to tie shoes. So this is something that's been going on for a long time. Let me ask you, have you ever tried to teach someone how to tie their shoes?
Yeah.
It's pretty frustrating, right? All right, let me ask this. So, whichever method you tie your shoes, you're trying to show someone. Could they not understand it, and they ended up learning how to do it the other way?
Yeah. No, they don't know how to do it my way. Right?
So I heard both, right? So one of you, some of you guys do the single loop, wrap around, pull through. And you taught somebody, and either they learned it that way or they just couldn't get it, but they figured out the two loop. Some of you taught the two loop.
I don't do either.
You don't do it? Just because you do
Yours
both.
rocks.
So he totally got you there on that one. All right, so some of you did the two loops, but the person you were trying to show didn't understand that, and they figured it out doing the single loop way.
And when I taught my son, he couldn't understand it from me. So he went to school, and one of the kids showed him the two loop method. I was doing the one loop method, so I couldn't even teach my own son.
All right, so let's do a follow-up question. How many of y'all have your shoes laces come untied all the time? All right, so if shoelaces come untied, what do you do to keep them from? You put it in your shoes. Put it in your shoes. What is that? All right, hold on. So if your shoelaces keep coming untied, what do most people normally do? Put it in your shoe.
Double knot.
Double knot, triple knot, put it in your shoe. Alright? So, when you double knot your shoe or triple knot your shoe, what's the problem with that?
It's too bulky.
It's hard to get untied. Sometimes they get stuck. Depending on your laces, if you have like real fine laces and you tighten it, they don't want to come undone, so you gotta like shove a pencil in there or something to try and pry it out. Right? Dude, everybody has these problems. Alright, so there are generations of people that have the same problem. The laces become untied, or when double knotted, become hard to untie. Sometimes we get stuck doing things the way our parents did them, because that's just what we do. You know, that, have you ever heard your parents? You know, why are we doing that?
Because I told you.
Because I told you so. This is what we do.
I said so.
So what if there's a different way? What if there's a better way? Still no way. So let's talk about that double knot. What if there's a better double knot? Ooh, a triple. Me. Just fell asleep over here again. My cameraman left me alone. Alright, so doesn't matter if you double bunny ear, single ear.
He was still showing.
Oh well. It's probably not running now. Alright, so when you do your laces, alright, so you do the first little cross knot, then you do your single loop or you do your double loop, cross them. But before you tighten them down, if you take one of your loops and push it back through a second time, right?
Wait.
So.
That is repeat that one more time. Pick this up by tonight.
Those are some slides.
What alien language you learn?
Alright. Now these are black shoes, so that's not going to be too helpful for those in the back. Alright, so you do your regular crossover. Alright, quiet down.
Let me do it with you.
Alright, you do your regular crossover. I'm a single loop guy, so I'm going to do my single loop. If you're a double loop, then you can do your double loop. Alright? So you pull, so now you've got two loops through. Now normally right here is where you pull your laces tight, right? Okay. Now if you take one of your loops and go back through that hole, and then pull it tight, you end up with a different kind of double knot. Now what's cool about this particular double knot is it'll pull against itself and tighten by itself, so it never loosens up. But you grab one of your strings and you pull it, the double knot comes out.
Man, I gotta try this out. You all can Thanksgiving.
Alright, so instead of leaving it loose when you do your single loop before you pull it tight, just wrap it around twice.
No, go take one of your loops and just go back through the hole.
That's weird. Around it like once, and then you pull it tight. Just wrap it around twice.
So there's another way.
What world do you come from?
That's pretty cool, isn't it? I learned that knot actually at a running shoe store. Paula and I run half marathons. So that's 13.1 miles. I was having issues with my shoes coming untied, even with the double knot. Right? So, or I'm trying to get my shoes on before a race and I can't get my knot undone to get my foot in the shoe. So I'm at the shoe store getting new running shoes, and this lady next to me is talking about it. She was like, no, you got to do your shoes like this. And it just blew my mind.
That was perfect timing.
It was exactly like that. So here's the point of that exercise. Being open-minded to learn new things about something we already know helps us grow. Your faith should be your own, not just something you were taught. There's always something you can learn. Just because you learn something from your parents or your grandparents or aunts or uncles or anybody doesn't mean that's where it stops. Always keep learning. My dad told me if you go through a day and you didn't learn anything, you wasted your day. No, I'm not wearing shoes.
Guess what? Anyway. You learned something today. You learned how to drive.
All right, so we're going to go back to... Okay, so we're going to go back to the verse that we covered earlier, and we'll wait until you're done. Thank you. We'll go back to John 8:31 through 37. So one of the things, as Ken was talking about, is that the people that Jesus is talking to in this verse, they're still banking on the faith of their ancestors. They're still going back and doing things the way their ancestors did. They're not listening to what Jesus is trying to tell them. The same thing with the shoelaces. You still keep tying your shoelace the same way over and over and over again, and someone new comes along with a different way to tie it, and you're like, he must be an alien.
Oh, yeah.
Right, yes. So just imagine what the people that Jesus was talking to, how they were feeling. Because he's coming in and telling them something totally different about faith. And they cannot even think that way. They can't rely on that, what he's saying. They keep going back to what their mom and dad said, what their cousin said, what their uncle said, and not listening to Jesus. So it's not all about it's all about your faith, your individual faith, and not about your parents' faith. So that's one thing you have to remember. Your faith is your own. It's not anything that you have to share. Okay? But what are some things that you have because of your parents? Just shout out some things that you have because of your parents.
Food.
Life.
Food, lights.
Life.
Life.
Life. Actual life.
Your eyes.
Discipline.
Discipline. Right, you get all kinds of things from your parents.
Money.
So what are some traits or characteristics that you, what are traits or characteristics do you enjoy sharing with other family members? What are some things you like to do with your family members?
Nothing.
What?
Nothing.
Eating? I heard eating. That's always mine. Eating is always mine.
Some people got a big forehead. I'm talking about.
Driving? Not
question.
Okay. All right.
This doesn't hear on that.
Well, here's an important question for you.
I got one. So, work ethic. Growing up, we had horses. We had to get up at like 4:30. We had to get up at like 4:30 in the morning to take care of horses. I was in sports, so even if I had a game or something like that, when I got home in the evening, even if it was an away game, I had to muck stalls, clean stalls out, feed horses. So it's 10:30 at night taking care of horses for an hour. So the days were pretty long. So one of the things I learned was, being able to put in a lot of effort for work. That's something, a trait that I got from my dad, because my dad did that. My dad had cancer. He fought through that, but he still did all of his work. He didn't let that go to the side. He stayed with that.
That's a good point. This is something just to think about in your mind. Just a question for you to consider. What have you learned about Jesus from your parents? Because it's awesome when our parents teach us about Jesus and teach us about faith, but it's not required. It's not something that you have to be taught, because Jesus wants a personal relationship with you. He doesn't want one that you're borrowing from your parents or from anyone else who's teaching you about Jesus. He wants that individual, personalized relationship with you. In each of us, and that's the first step on your journey of faith, to understand that just because your faith may be a little bit different than the person sitting next to you doesn't mean that it's wrong. Just like the way Mr. Ken ties his shoes is different from everybody else, but it's not wrong. Okay?
It's what works for me, and your faith needs to be what works for you.
So when you're thinking about individual faith, let's go on to, why do you think Jesus wants a personal relationship with everyone? Why do you think that's true? Anyone? Think about it for a minute.
Okay.
Why do you think Jesus wants an individual relationship with you? And remember, this is a safe place. There are no wrong answers. You're fine. Yes.
To show that he cares about you.
To show that he cares about you. Yes. Very good.
So why would your faith with Jesus what he's doing with you be different than somebody else's? Why wouldn't it be the same exact thing? Why wouldn't it have the same parameters?
Ain't nobody the same.
Because we all have different things that we need to work on.
That's a good answer.
Because not everyone goes through the same thing.
That's a great answer. Same thing.
And everyone's not the same.
Everybody's different.
Yeah.
Everybody, same family, 2 different personalities. He's going to connect with you 2 different ways, right? How he connects here is different than how he connects here because they're different people. So that's why your faith with Jesus is different than everybody else's. That's why you can't have the same exact faith as everyone else. You have to have your own faith, your own belief, your own relationship with Jesus.
And I'll tell you, I was brought up in the Catholic Church. My mom was devout Catholic. We went to church every Sunday, regardless of what happened. And I would go to church and do the sit down, kneel, stand up, sit down, kneel, stand up. I knew the verses, I knew what to say, I knew the procedures and what was going to happen next, but I never had a connection with Jesus. Never. I can honestly say that. It took me a long time to figure that out. So the earlier you learn that, the better, okay? So I finally realized that I wasn't getting anything out of church. So the only thing I knew to do was to stop going to church. Not a smart move at all. Not a smart move. And then I realized that, you know what? It's not the church that was wrong. It was how I was approaching things, and it was how I was learning things, and that wasn't the way I needed to be taught. That wasn't the way I needed to learn about Jesus. So then I finally realized that I needed to go try something different. And I did, and it was amazing. I couldn't believe the things that they were saying, that how much Jesus loved me. I couldn't believe it. I literally, the first time I sat in the church, I sat there and just cried the whole time. Just, like ugly cry. Yeah. So it was a good thing that the lights were low, because it was bad. But it was the most amazing experience I've ever had. And I'll never forget that. So even though I was brought up Catholic, I didn't know. So you have to be willing to step out from what your parents teach you and learn on your own. So it's all about your faith and not your works. So this is what Jesse was talking about last week, when he was talking about it's not about all the different things that you can do that are good, that's going to prove your devotion to Jesus or prove how much you love Jesus. It's not. It is about your faith. It is about being his disciple. It's about being true to his word. No? Okay. All right. So, what are some things that good Christians tend to do?
Go to church.
Go to church. I was a good Catholic girl. I went to church every Sunday.
I was an altar boy, so I went to church every Sunday, and I served, held the Bible up, did communion.
I was a Eucharistic minister. I did communion. I did it all. But it was not in my heart, and it was not my faith. It was what I was being told to do. Okay? So what are some sinful, this is a hard question. What are some sinful motivations that sometimes might have underlying good behavior?
Boost your ego.
To boost your ego. Pride is, oh gosh, everybody experiences it. We do. And it's very difficult. That was a great answer.
And that's a big one, actually, because it's actually the first answer that I wrote down. Because I did these questions too, and I was thinking about it, I was like, man, that's the biggest thing is ego. People get into positions of authority and think that they're all that. That, you know what? This is what we're doing, how we're doing it, and I don't care what you think. Right? And that happens everywhere. It happens in church, happens in schools, happens with your friends. You have that bossy friend that you like, but oh man, that's all finger pointing going on.
I'm not bossy.
So that's just
It is. Even when I was going to Catholic Church and I became a Eucharistic minister, it wasn't because I felt like I was led to do that. It was like, oh, I can be a Eucharistic minister. I can get up there and give people communion. You know, not everybody does that. And that's pride and that's arrogance. And that's not good. Not good. It's not pretty.
So you're doing something that you think is right, but you're doing it for the wrong reason.
So what about this statement? It's easier to do good things than bad things. Do you think that's true? No. I don't think it's true either. When I was a teacher in school, I would always tell my kids, and I always tell my son too, it's always more difficult to do the right thing. Always. It's so much easier to be like, I don't care. I'm just going to do whatever. What's that? No. What did you say?
What'd you say?
Oh, I said if you find $1 on the floor, you know.
You find $1 on the floor.
I found $1
It's easier to
yesterday,
put it in your
and I
pocket
was
than to
gonna
go
take
ask
it
if
up,
somebody
but I
lost it, right? So that's a great example. That's a great example. So
I almost did that as an example here. Just saying, I thought about it, and I was this close to doing it. I was like, you know,
but I wouldn't let them get rid of one of our dollars.
Stingy.
I know.
saving up for a house.
Yeah. Why doesn't Jesus say the right things you do will set you free?
Because that's not showing faith or trust or anything.
It's not showing faith and trust.
Because you just do it to
No.
I don't know what to say.
Right.
You have it.
I don't know. It's just like you'll be doing it, but it's not for the right thing, I would say.
That's it.
That's it. You're doing things, maybe it's not for the right thing, right reason.
Like Tommy had.
I was going to go back to what you said, doing the right thing for the wrong reason.
Exactly. So the next point we want to make is that your faith happens because of Jesus, right? That this is actually like the best part of the whole thing, right? Because it's only because of Jesus that we can have a faith of our own. Nobody else's. We don't have to share with anybody. It's all ours. In the Old Testament, now you remember in the Old Testament, people were sacrificing animals to pay the penalty of sin, right? So they go sacrifice something so they can be forgiven for their sins. So Jesus came to radically change that. He died for all the sins of every person, regardless, every person. Each one of us in this room, and anyone who's ever lived. Now that's a lot of sin. That's a lot of sin because every day you sin. Imagine that.
Sin doesn't, you don't actually have to do it. Jesus defines sin if you even think it.
You can think it.
If it's in your mind, you've already committed the sin. So just because someone made you mad, you want to punch them and you didn't do it, you've already sinned because you thought about doing it.
Right.
So it's impossible to be without sin. But he came and he sacrificed himself to cover all of that.
Yeah, he took it on himself. He died that horrible death on the cross, but then he rose again. He rose again, all because he loves you and he wants that personal relationship with you, that one-on-one relationship with you. So that's a huge sacrifice, right? Right, so let's kind of drill that down a little bit to other sacrifices, make it a little bit that you can understand it. So describe a time someone made a sacrifice for you. Think about that. Someone made a sacrifice for you.
Does Jesus count as an answer?
No.
Okay,
No.
that's fine.
Other things.
So just in your mind, think about that. And think about how that made you feel. That person, maybe they sacrificed their time. Maybe it was your mom who was in a rush and didn't have a whole lot of time, but yet you wanted to go to the mall. And so she said, okay, and took you to the mall. That's a sacrifice of her time. So how did that make you feel? And how did you respond to that? Were you gracious? Or were you kind of like, yeah, that's how it should be?
Not grateful.
What about within your group of friends? You have one friend that wants to do something really bad, and your other friends are like, we're not going to do that.
That's me.
Or they change their minds, and you're like, you know what? They really want to do that bad, so we're not going to do this. We'll go ahead and do that with them. That's a sacrifice in itself. It doesn't have to be a huge sacrifice. You don't have to die literally like Jesus did. It could be something small. Time. It could be attention. You want to do something of your own, but you give that up so you can give attention to somebody. That's a sacrifice there.
Here's something else to think about. And again, you can just think about this in your mind. What does Jesus' sacrifice on the cross mean to you personally? How can it impact the relationship you begin or already have with him? What does it mean to you to be set free from sin? What does that look like on an everyday basis? Because remember, the Son set you free. When he died on that cross, he set you free from sin.
All right, so we're going to break into small groups.
We don't have a whole lot of time.
We don't have a lot of time, so this is just going to be like a quick little 5-minute break. All right, so we have questions to the leaders. Actually, they already have them. If they don't have them, you can write them down real quick.
They'll be up here too.
We'll have them up here on the board. We're going to stay in the room, but we will separate into groups.
I'm never gonna meet Daniel.
All right, everybody have the group? All right, so here's your questions. All right, Hebrews 11:1. You got to read Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the confidence that we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things we cannot see. So question number 1. Describe a time when you were hoping for something. What sustained you as you waited? That's question 1. So these questions will stay up on the board, so if you need to refer to them. Question 2. How is it possible to have faith in Jesus when we can't see him? Question 3. How does your faith in Jesus affect what you hope for and how you wait? All right, let me get everybody's attention. All right, so a lot of what we talked about tonight is you have faith, or you may be at the beginning of your faith. You may not be sure if you have faith, and that's totally cool. The point is, you need to find your way, not have someone tell you how to believe in Jesus, because it's not going to work. It's not going to be your way. You're not going to connect with it. You're not going to understand. You're never really going to get anywhere with it. So all the games and the talk and everything we do is just to let you know that it's totally cool if how you connect with Jesus is different than everyone else. You don't have to have the perfect prayer. You don't have to be, volunteer everywhere and do all the stuff and be everything, that you think everyone wants you to be. Because it comes down to your connection with Jesus. And you're the only one that can make that. So, what's up? Bow your heads real quick. Lord Jesus, thank you for this night, our time with these children that are growing into young adults and who will be finding their way. They need to make their connection with you, just like I did. And we'll grow, and we'll learn, and we'll continue learning for the rest of our lives on how to be and connect with you the best way we can. In Lord Jesus' name we pray. Amen.